So for anyone looking for the missing ingredient, bollocks. Oh my god, I just don't know what I'm saying. Shank. Hey, what's up fellow travellers? Since it's the end of the holiday season, I figured this was probably as good a time as any to get started on fight scenes. Oh yeah. So this can be a really challenging topic to handle, but I guarantee this is going to be a lot quicker than actually learning how to fight for real. Fight scenes are one of those areas of my writing that have always been praised, ever since my original drafts. People have always commented that they perfectly balanced realism with escapism, which, hey, that's the point, right? I think I owe a lot of thanks to the way that I've grown up as to why my fight scenes have been able to come across this way. When I was younger, I got involved in quite a few martial arts, never anything that I really took off with, but enough to cement a basic understanding in my mind. And then as I grew up, a fascination with studying choreography and just generally enjoying the crap out of a really good fight scene progressed into the research that I then began doing for my novel and just generally for interest. As you can probably tell, I have a bit of a fondness for swords. I mean, how else are we supposed to deal with the zombie apocalypse? I have always been a fan of epic battles, but despite this, and the huge sense of satisfaction you get from completing a fight scene, I know this can seem a really daunting challenge to face. Any approach to a fight scene requires careful attention to detail to pull off properly. These areas take a lot of time and effort to master, but I figured I'd do whatever I could to help y'all out with this one. So for anyone looking for the missing ingredient that'll really bring their fight scenes to life, watch on. This one's for you guys. On guard! So the first thing that you're going to need to grasp here is that your fight scenes need to serve a purpose beyond mere thrills alone. Don't just feel obliged to throw one in because you feel like it's necessary. Okay, that's not a good enough reason. For anyone who watched my video on creating sparkling dialogue, this isn't going to be news to you. If a fight scene reveals something about your characters or helps drive the plot along, chances are it needs to be there. If it doesn't, then that's when you need to really question whether or not this fight scene actually has a point to it or not. Consider if removing the fight scene would have any real impact on your story or not. And again, this can't just be, oh, but the fight scene gives lots of thrills and chills and spills. You've got to be brutally honest with yourself here, guys, okay? Because otherwise, you're just going to have fight scenes cropping up that don't mean shit. Used well, the fight scene can be one of the most powerful tools in a writer's arsenal. But you can't just throw one in any way you want. Write one when it's needed, not just to try and keep a reader interested. It's not gonna work. That's just like fucking window dressing. Fight scenes should have stakes and affect the plot, which brings us nicely on to point number 2, stakes. And no, I am not talking about the tasty ones that you eat, although I am now really hungry. Think about what your characters are fighting for. The higher the stakes, the more intense the fight scene needs to be. Listen, if you want your readers to give a shit, then your fight scene needs to have stakes. The characters have gotta have something on the line. These stakes don't need to be spelled out in black and white, but they need to be clear. Now it should be clear already if you've driven your plot well up to this point and set up the inciting incident for the fight scene. The catalyst, the reason that these guys are fighting each other. You've got to make sure to build up your stakes and inciting incident clearly as a natural progression of the story. Otherwise, there's a good chance this fight scene just doesn't belong. Fights typically happen because two sides have really strong opposing beliefs. Once you understand the characters and stakes involved, as well as the inciting incident, that's a pretty surefire way to guarantee this fight scene serves a purpose. And if it doesn't, you know what to do with it. Now that we know that our fight scene really belongs here and serves a purpose greater than itself, let's dive headfirst into the research we need to do in order to make sure this scene is as strong as it can possibly be. Consider your character's level of experience, any known styles or training they might have had for accurate representation. Do they know how to fight hand to hand? Or with specific weaponry? Are they a trained fighter, part of an army, or a gladiator who stands on their own? Whatever it is, whichever path fits your characters, Learn your shit. Terms, stances, weapons, strikes, hits, effects, magic. Learn it all. It's all relevant. And make sure you keep cause and effect in the forefront of your mind. Listen, if you don't know this shit, it's gonna be really painfully obvious to your readers, and it's gonna switch them off like that. There are so many ways you can do your research for this, guys, and it really all comes down to what works best for you. You can go for the hands-on approach, or you can do what I did and watch a shitload of videos. Study disciplines like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Taekwondo, or go and watch some MMA if you want to learn about hand-to-hand combat. Or if you're after something a little bit more deadly, there are loads of sources online where you can find some super useful material to get a head around real swordsmanship. I'll put a few links to some channels I found in the description below, in case that's of use for you guys. But one that I really do recommend checking out is a channel called The Swords Path. This guy is a phenomenal swordsman, mostly using long swords, but the dude's got some skill with all sorts, so do check him out. I found this channel the most useful that I came across to help me really nail down terminologies and get inside the head of somebody who's actually in a situation where they are fighting somebody for their life. Because yeah, there's a video about that as well. Check it out. Because trust me, you don't want to overlook anything with your research here. It's not all about the flurries and the flourishes, the dance itself. It's about the aftermath as well. You've got to be clear on the effects of any wound inflicted by a weapon included in your battle. Pretty straightforward, right? Injuries take time to heal. And if not, you better have a bloody good reason why not. Regardless of their skill or any influencing factors, characters should at least feel some kind of impact from the fight, emotional or physical. And if you're using magic in your fight scenes, make sure you really flesh out the systems that you're using so that it's a visceral, integral part of the world with realistic consequences. You've got to be clear on the effects of any weapon involved in a fight that you are portraying. Aftermath is a stupidly important consideration which should never get overlooked. Now that we've done all this awesome research, I'm gonna counter myself here. Don't overdo it, okay? You need to know everything, but your reader sure as shit doesn't. You've got to find the balance between using your knowledge and maintaining an entertaining flow. Fight scenes are fast-paced, they're exciting moments, and you don't want to be slowing them down by getting too wordy or technical. For example, most people know what a parry is, at least in the vaguest sense. But if you start throwing fencing stances and maneuvers into the mix, there's a good chance you might lose a lot of your audience. Like, do you really know what court actually is? The main point here, guys, is that your knowledge doesn't bleed into your writing. Which leads us on to my next point, finding the sweet spot. With fight scenes, we need to offer enough description to guide the scene and enough wiggle room for our audience's imagination. Think of the fight scene like a dance. You can describe the character's motions, occasional intricacies, and overall choreography without getting too bogged down in each individual move. If you describe too much, you're going to lose your reader to dull as fuck writing. He blocked right, shifted left, lifted his arm, looked up, blocked the next strike, caught one from his right, twisted around. Boring. Crapola. That sucks. But you've just got to offer enough insight into the action while leaving enough freedom for your reader's imagination. That's the game we're playing here, guys. If you remember that while you're going through your fight scenes, it's gonna help you massively. Promise. Okay, that leads us on to point number 6. It's all about the verbiage, baby. Okay, once again, you want to make sure that you keep this shit powerful, not weighed down by your research. Guys, seriously, the research is there to guide us. It's gonna get you to your destination, absolutely. But don't forget to let your imagination do the driving. Now, depending on the stakes, it can be totally okay to slow down the pace of a fight scene, especially if we're talking about a training or sparring scene. Absolutely. But if this is a real fight with serious stakes and something genuine on the line, then you need strong verbs for a powerful, visceral experience. I'm talking hard, painful sounding shit that makes your audience go, yeah! Crush, slam, pound, jab, crunch, smash! Make your reader feel physically involved in the fight. Hey, it works for the comic books. It'll work for you too. Promise. As a general rule, overly complex descriptions are just going to detract from a fight scene's entertainment value. Listen, we know we can't control fully what the audience sees, So just go for the most impactful, entertaining fight scene that you can pull out of your ass. Okay, so point number 7 is one only a fool would hide from. We're gonna dive straight in the deep end here with emotion. Guys, there's no two ways about it. Great fight scenes evoke emotion, and those that don't are sorely lacking because of it. Come on, we're writing books here, okay? We don't have special effects we can fall back on. We need to make our characters relatable and real. We need to show the stakes. We need to consider what emotions are backing the fight scene. Anger, loyalty, passion, betrayal, and of course, we need to consider the physical manifestations of these emotions so that we can show our audience the racing heart, the sweating brow, the clothes plastered to our skin, the trembling hands, or the surging lungs. Pain especially is fantastic for drawing the reader into the intensity of a fight. It raises the stakes like a charm. Get your reader really feeling with those verbs. Agonizing, coursing pain, throbbing, stinging, searing. And consider the accompanying elements as well. The mouth which fills with blood, the blurring vision, or the limp. These all help to show the severity of the fight scene and will keep your audience invested in your character, rooting for them, and desperate to find out how this is all going to play out. Another great way you can do this is with dialogue, either before, during, or after the fight scene, as long as it fits. Don't force it. For those of you who haven't checked out my dialogue video, I'm going to pop a link in the description below, because I've mentioned it twice now, so you should probably go check it out if you're still watching. Go on, it'll help. We've all heard the saying that a story is only as good as its villain. Well, guess what? The same goes for your fight scenes. I'm going to assume that you've given the same attention to developing your antagonists as you have your main characters. But if you haven't, make sure you go and check out my videos on creating believable characters and apply some of those lessons to your bad guys. Because if the opponent evokes strong emotion in your character, you're off to a winning start straight out of the gate. Your fight scene has emotion, it has purpose, motivation, the opponent, all the marks of greatness. And the opponent must pose a legitimate threat. They've got to make the character struggle and keep the audience guessing. Think about any story you've really enjoyed. The hero almost always gets fucked up really hard before finding their resolve and channeling that inner badass. Oh, and make sure no characters are untouchable either. OP fights get dull as fuck super quick. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about realism. I know, guys, okay, we're storytellers, we can bend the rules, but be realistic. Don't make your main character an immediate badass unless it fits the plot or their backstory. And don't have battles without consequence. Everyone's fine an hour later. Huge wars with 0 casualties. Really? Really? Yeah, I know, I get passionate about this kind of stuff, I'm not sorry. But moving on, so we've already spoken a bit about pacing, but I just wanted to go over it a little bit more for you. I really don't stress worrying too much about the pacing until after you've drafted your fight scene, but while you're in the editing process, make sure you read it aloud, and the flow should be quite obvious to you. This is super important because, as we know, fight scenes should be fast-paced. At least the important ones. They're exciting moments in our stories. Treat them like it. So watch out for those long, overly wordy descriptions. And make sure that the fight scene flows smoothly throughout, never once tripping over flowery language or the research that you've put into it. Okay, we've covered a lot of different points here today, guys, and we're closing in on the finish line. But I hear what you're saying. What if you're like me? What if you've got a book with loads of different fight scenes in it? How the hell are you supposed to make each unique and memorable? Well, I'd suggest mixing and matching your approach to writing the scenes for a start. You can try varying the level of detail that you go into, or shifting the perspective that you're portraying the battle from. I'd also suggest working the fight scene into the scenery. Have your fighters engage with the environment around them, hurling pieces of whatever at each other, or maybe they're battling some crazy ass weather conditions. I don't know, think outside the box, whatever fits your story, right? And for those climactic battles, the best way to make them stand out is by raising those stakes higher than they've ever been before. And remember, if it starts to sound like writing at any point during your fight scenes, or any part of your novel, but fight scenes, Rewrite it. Vary your sentence structure, guys. Treat that shit like a poem. It gets super boring reading 17 5-word lines in a row. Make that shit sing like music, like poetry. Really hammer that home. And last but not least, we have the aftermath. Now, I know we've touched on this already, but what the hell? It's super important, and you should never forget about it. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Newton! And the aftermath isn't always physical. There could be mental or even global effects to deal with afterwards. And remember, conflict doesn't always disappear after the fight. It just doesn't. Oh, and I lied. That wasn't the last one. I got one more in the chamber for you guys. One more bonus tip for the adventurous. If you really want to learn how to tie the technical with the entertaining, then study fight choreography alongside those real-life fighting examples that you're researching. And consider studying shows like Arrow, which effectively switch point of views to cover large battles with an exhilarating, sweeping shot, which you can emulate with careful attention to detail, specifically around how the point of view is passed, because that's a delicate bastard. But once you get there, you'll be able to paint a beautifully wide shot on an awesome battle that your readers are gonna love. And that about wraps it for today, guys. As always, this is just what has worked for me, some tips that I felt you might find useful. When in doubt, the best advice that I can give you is just to sit back, disconnect, and stop trying to control this. Let the scene flow freely. And of course, read fight scenes others have done as well. There are so many different ways that authors approach this. Some will guide you flowing through the motions of each combatant, while others will paint a hefty brawl in a tiny paragraph. The choice? It's up to you. For those who want to get involved in the fight scene and really do it justice, I highly recommend checking out Andrzej Sapkowski's The Witcher series and R.A. Salvatore's Dristo Erden series. These two guys have got fight scenes down. I have learned so much by reading their works over the years. I highly recommend you check them out. As always, if you have any questions, comments or suggestions, please do hit me up in the comment section below. And of course, if this video has sharpened your steel, then smash that like button, hit subscribe and ding that bell so you never miss a new video. You know when new videos are? Thursday. I really hope this video has been useful for you and given you something to take away which you can implement into your fight scenes to take them to that next level. Please be sure to share this video with anyone you know who might also benefit from it. Until next time, my friends, see you on the other side. But make sure to build up your... You've got... I'm not talking to myself. That's what I'm missing. I'm not being enough of an idiot today. That's better.